The sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the manicured lawns of Crestwood Estates, a suburban neighborhood in central Florida, where my wife, Laura, and I had settled 2 years ago. I'm Sam, a highway patrol officer, though I keep that under wraps in the neighborhood. Nobody needs to know I spend my days pulling over speeders and handling roadside chaos. We'd moved here for the quiet streets and good schools for our daughter Ellie, who was 7 and obsessed with her new bike. The house was a single-story ranch with a tidy front yard, a small porch where Laura liked to sip coffee, and a garage where I parked my patrol car out of sight. Crestwood seemed perfect, except for one thing: the HOA. The Homeowners Association was run by a woman named Diane, the kind of person who'd earned the nickname HOA Cop for her relentless patrols. Clipboard in hand, sniffing out violations like a bloodhound. She was in her late 40s, with a perm that screamed 1980s and a penchant for neon tracksuits. From day one, Diane made it clear she ruled Crestwood like her personal kingdom. The HOA rules were suffocating. No basketball hoops in driveways. No cars parked on the street overnight. Grass couldn't exceed 3 inches. Laura and I tried to play along, mowing on schedule and keeping our trash cans hidden, but Diane's eagle eyes caught everything. Our first run-in came a month after moving in. I'd parked my personal truck, a beat-up F-150, on the street for an hour while unloading groceries. By evening, a neon yellow violation notice was taped to the driver's window. $50 fine for unauthorized parking. I laughed it off, paid it, and figured that was that. But Diane's visits became routine. A warning about Ellie's chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Defacing community property. A citation for our mailbox flag being misaligned. Laura, ever the peacemaker, said, "She's just bored, Sam. Ignore her." But I could feel the irritation building. This was our home, our sanctuary after long shifts on the highway. Diane was turning it into a prison. The real trouble started one Saturday in June. I was off duty, tinkering with my truck in the driveway, when Diane rolled up in her golf cart, her official HOA patrol vehicle, complete with a flashing amber light she'd probably bought online. Ellie was riding her bike in lazy circles on our cul-de-sac, her ponytail bouncing. Diane screeched to a stop, her voice sharp as a whistle. "Sir, that child needs to be in a designated play area. Sidewalks are for pedestrian traffic only." I wiped grease from my hands, trying to stay calm. "Diane, she's 7. It's our street. She's fine." But Diane wasn't having it. She scribbled furiously on her clipboard, muttering about safety hazards, and handed me a $100 fine for unsupervised minor activity. Ellie stopped pedaling, her eyes wide. "Am I in trouble, Daddy?" she asked. My jaw clenched. "No, sweetie. You're perfect." But inside I was boiling. Diane wasn't just a nuisance. She was bullying my kid. That night, Laura and I sat at the kitchen table. The fine crumpled in my fist. "This is ridiculous," I said. "She's fining us for living in our own neighborhood." Laura nodded, her usual calm fraying. "Ellie's scared to ride her bike now. It's not right." I thought about my job, upholding laws, protecting people. Diane's rules weren't laws. They were power trips. I pulled out the HOA bylaws, a dense packet we'd skimmed when we bought the house. Buried in the fine print was a clause about enforcement vehicles needing proper authorization. Diane's golf cart, with its tacky light, wasn't registered with the county or HOA. I grinned. "She's playing cop," I said. "But she doesn't know I'm the real deal." Laura raised an eyebrow. "You're not pulling her over, Sam," I laughed. "Not yet, but we're going to play her game and win." The next week, Diane's patrols intensified. She'd cruise by our house daily, eyeing our lawn like it was a crime scene. Neighbors whispered about her HOA cop routine. She'd pull people over in her golf cart, issuing fines for everything from untrimmed hedges to excessive porch decorations. One neighbor, a retiree named Carl, got slapped with a $200 fine for leaving his garage door open too long. "She's out of control," he told me over the fence. "Someone needs to stop her." I nodded, my mind already spinning. I started keeping a log of her patrols, noting times and violations she cited. I also checked county records. Her golf cart wasn't licensed for street use, a violation of local ordinances. As a highway patrol officer, I knew the law backward and forward. Diane was about to learn she'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. I decided to start small. I called a buddy at the county clerk's office and confirmed that Diane's golf cart needed a low-speed vehicle permit to operate on public roads, which included our neighborhood streets. It didn't have one. I also found out the HOA hadn't filed for any enforcement vehicle permits, meaning her patrols were technically illegal. Armed with this, I went to an HOA meeting, expecting to reason with the board. Diane presided, her neon tracksuit glowing under the fluorescent lights. I raised my hand. "Diane, your golf cart's not registered. That's against county law." The room went quiet. She smirked. "This is HOA business, Sam. My vehicle's approved for community use." She waved off my point and moved on. The board, mostly her cronies, backed her up. I left fuming but more determined. Diplomacy wasn't working. It was time to plan. Over the next month, I gathered evidence like I was building a case for court. I set up a second security camera to catch Diane's golf cart rolling by, its amber light flashing illegally. I talked to neighbors, collecting stories. Diane finding a single mom for her kid's tricycle, docking another family for unauthorized holiday lights. The anger was palpable, but fear kept most quiet. Diane had a knack for making people feel small. I knew we needed a spark to unite them. Laura suggested a neighborhood block party, a way to bring people together and show Diane we weren't scared. "Make it legal," she said. "She'll hate that." I grinned. This was our first move in a bigger game, one where I'd use my badge, not to bully, but to level the playing field. The block party idea spread fast. We picked a date in August, got a county permit, and sent invites to every household. The goal was to show Diane we could gather without her HOA cop nonsense. But I had a bigger plan brewing, one that would turn her own tactics against her. I just needed the right moment. As I watched Ellie ride her bike again, a little hesitantly, I felt the stakes. This wasn't just about fines or rules. It was about our home, our daughter's freedom, and showing a bully that real authority doesn't come from a clipboard. Diane thought she was the law in Crestwood. She was about to meet the highway patrol. Diane's golf cart became a daily menace, its amber light flashing like a cheap beacon as she cruised Crestwood Estates, hunting for violations. Every morning I'd see her zipping by our house, her eyes scanning our lawn for anything she could pin on us. It wasn't just us. She'd pull over anyone, anywhere. Last week, she'd stopped Mrs. Nguyen across the street for improperly stored garden tools, slapping her with a 75-eyed fine. The poor woman, a widow who kept her yard pristine, was too intimidated to fight back. I'd had enough of Diane's HOA cop act, but I knew going toe-to-toe without a plan would only make her double down. As a highway patrol officer, I'd seen bullies like her, people who thrived on control, not reason. So I started building a case, the kind I'd prep for a court appearance, methodical and airtight. Laura was on board, though she warned me, "Sam, don't let this get personal. We're fighting for Ellie, not your ego." She was right, but the sight of my daughter hesitating to ride her bike on our own street made my blood boil. I began by digging deeper into the law. Diane's golf cart was my first target. Florida statutes were clear. Low-speed vehicles like hers needed a county permit, registration, and specific safety features: lights, seatbelts, a visible license plate. Her cart had none of these, just that ridiculous amber light she'd probably bought off Amazon. I called my contact at the county, who confirmed no permits existed for any HOA vehicle in Crestwood. Strike one. Next, I combed through the HOA bylaws again. They allowed enforcement patrols, but required board approval for any vehicle use, including proof of compliance with local laws. Diane's cart was unlisted, meaning every patrol she made was unauthorized. Strike two! I started documenting her movements, using my patrol officer instincts, dates, times, and photos from our security cameras. One clip showed her stopping in front of our house at 6 a.m., measuring our grass with a ruler. It was absurd, but it was evidence. Neighbors were key to our plan, but most were scared. Diane had a way of making people feel like they'd lose their homes if they crossed her. I started small, chatting with Carl over the fence. He was a retired mechanic, gruff but kind, and he'd been fined for leaving his toolbox out once. "She's got no right," he grumbled. "But who's going to stop her?" I told him about the golf cart violations and my idea to rally the neighborhood. His eyes lit up. "You're a cop, right? Lay it on her." I laughed, but clarified I was highway patrol, not local PD. And this wasn't about flashing my badge, it was about outsmarting her legally. Carl agreed to spread the word, quietly, to people he trusted. Soon, we had a group of 10 households in a secret email chain, sharing stories of Diane's overreach. A $150 fine for a non-approved mailbox. A warning for kids playing tag on a lawn. The anger was there, but we needed numbers. Laura and I pushed the block party plan hard. We chose a Saturday in August, secured a county event permit, and printed flyers emphasizing it was a community unity event on public streets, not HOA-controlled land. We invited every household, even Diane's allies, to avoid accusations of exclusion. The email chain buzzed with excitement. People offered to bring food, set up games, even hire a local band. But Diane got wind of it. 2 days after the flyers went out, she sent an HOA newsletter blast. Unauthorized gatherings risk fines up to $500. All events must be pre-approved by the board. She followed up with a personal email to us, warning that our disruptive plans could lead to legal consequences. Laura read it and snorted. "She's scared, Sam. This is her trying to shut us down." I nodded, but my gut twisted. If we botched this, Diane could turn the neighborhood against us. I decided to up the ante. I filed a formal complaint with the county about Diane's unregistered golf cart, citing Florida Statute 316.2212 for low-speed vehicle violations. I didn't mention my job, just submitted it as a concerned resident. The county responded quickly, confirming they'd investigate. I also reached out to a lawyer friend, Mike, who specialized in HOA disputes. He reviewed the bylaws and laughed. "This woman's operating like she's the sheriff. You've got her on unauthorized enforcement and potential trespassing." He suggested we request HOA financial records, as rumors swirled that Diane used dues for personal perks, like gas for her golf cart. We filed a public records request, knowing it would take weeks, but could uncover dirt. Mike also drafted a cease and desist letter, demanding Diane stop enforcing rules on our property, citing her lack of legal authority. Diane didn't back down. She started parking her golf cart outside our house for longer stretches, sometimes an hour, scribbling notes and taking photos. One evening, Ellie came inside, her voice small. "Daddy, why's that lady always watching us?" My heart sank. I hugged her and said, "She's just confused, kiddo. We're fixing it." But I was done playing nice. I called a meeting with our email group at Carl's house, away from prying eyes. 12 people showed up, cramped in his living room, swapping stories. A young couple, the Garcias, shared how Diane fined them $300 for a non-compliant fence, forcing them to delay their daughter's birthday party. Another neighbor, Priya, said Diane threatened to report her to code enforcement for a vegetable garden. The room crackled with frustration. I laid out the plan. The block party would show unity, But we'd also start a petition to recall the board. Florida HOA law allowed a recall with 51% of resident votes, 41 of 80 households. We had 12 so far. It was a start. The block party prep became our rallying cry. Laura organized a potluck, while Carl and Priya recruited more neighbors. We spread the word carefully, avoiding Diane's loyalists. But she was relentless, posting signs around Crestwood. Respect HOA rules. Report violations. She even tried to intimidate vendors, calling the band we'd hired and claiming the event was unpermitted. Luckily, our county approval held firm. The night before the party, Diane left a voicemail on our phone, her voice dripping with venom. "Sam, Laura, cancel this event, or you'll regret it. The HOA won't tolerate chaos." I played it for Mike, who chuckled. "She's threatening you on record." "Keep that." I saved the file, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about a party anymore. It was about taking back our neighborhood. The morning of the block party, I woke up to a text from Carl. "She's circling already." I looked out the window and saw Diane's golf cart idling at the end of our street, her clipboard ready. My pulse quickened, but I reminded myself we were covered. Permits, bylaws, evidence. Ellie helped Laura set up tables in the cul-de-sac, her excitement infectious despite the tension. Neighbors started arriving, bringing dishes and folding chairs. By noon, over 50 people were there, kids playing, music humming. I kept an eye on Diane, waiting for her move. She didn't disappoint. At 2 p.m., she rolled up, amber light flashing, and stepped out, shouting, "This event is unapproved! Disperse now, or face fines." I walked over, calm but firm, holding the county permit. "Diane, this is legal. These are public streets. Back off." Her face twisted, but the crowd was watching. She was losing control, and she knew it. The block party was a turning point, like a match struck in a room full of kindling. Diane's attempt to shut it down backfired spectacularly. Neighbors who'd been on the fence now saw her for what she was. A bully in a neon tracksuit, wielding a clipboard like a badge she didn't earn. As she stood there, clutching her golf cart's steering wheel, her demand to disperse met with laughter and jeers. Carl, beer in hand, called out, "Lady, you're not the police!" The crowd roared, and Diane's face went beet red. She muttered something about consequences and sped off, her amber light flickering pathetically. I felt a surge of adrenaline, not just from the win, but from the realization that Crestwood was waking up. Laura squeezed my arm, her eyes bright. "We've got her rattled, Sam." But I knew Diane wouldn't go quietly. She'd come at us harder, and we needed to be ready. This was no longer just about our family. It was about freeing the neighborhood from her reign. That night, as the party wound down and fireflies blinked over the cul-de-sac, our email group swelled to 25 households. People were angry but energized, sharing more stories of Diane's overreach. Priya sent a photo of a $200 fine for her garden, scribbled with Diane's signature. The Garcias forwarded an email where Diane threatened to lien their home over a non-compliant porch light. I saved everything, building a digital dossier like I would for a highway patrol case. My training kicked in. Organize, verify, anticipate. I knew Diane would try to spin this, maybe claim we were disrupting community harmony. We needed more than stories. We needed hard evidence to bury her. I called Mike, our lawyer, and updated him. "She's on the ropes," he said. "Keep pushing the petition, but get me something concrete on her finances." That's the knockout punch. The next morning, I checked the county's response to my golf cart complaint. They'd issued Diane a warning for operating an unregistered vehicle, with a 30-day deadline to comply or face fines. It wasn't much, but it was leverage. I shared the news in the email group, and the replies flooded in. "She's breaking the law? Time to end this." But Diane was already counterattacking. She sent an HOA newsletter claiming the block party violated community standards and announced a special meeting to address resident misconduct. She named me and Laura directly, accusing us of inciting disorder. Ellie overheard Laura reading the email and asked, "Are we bad people, Mommy?" Laura hugged her tight. "No, honey. We're standing up for what's right." My chest ached. This fight was taking a toll, but backing down wasn't an option. Not with my daughter's peace at stake. I dove deeper into the HOA records. The public records request came through, and Mike helped me sift through years of financials. We found gold. Over $10,000 in miscellaneous expenses tied to Diane, including gas reimbursements for her golf cart, payments to a consulting firm with no listed address, and charges for community beautification projects no one remembered. One receipt stood out, a $2,000 check for event planning, dated the same weekend Diane hosted a lavish barbecue at her house, which only her cronies attended. "This is fraud," Mike said, his voice gleeful. "We present this at the meeting, and she's done." But we had to be careful. Diane had allies on the board, and they'd try to bury it. We needed the petition to hit 41 signatures to force a recall vote. I hit the pavement, knocking on doors with Carl and Priya. We shared the financial findings, keeping it quiet to avoid tipping off Diane's crew. Neighbors were shocked. Mrs. Nguyen signed on the spot, saying, "She fined me for my roses, and she's stealing our money?" By week's end, we had 38 signatures, just 3 shy. The special meeting was in 5 days, and Diane was pulling out all the stops. She posted flyers around Crestwood, warning that rebellious actions could raise HOA dues for everyone. She even tried to intimidate Laura at the grocery store, cornering her in the parking lot. "You're causing trouble, Laura," she hissed. "Think about your daughter." Laura came home shaking but furious. "She's threatening us, Sam. We end this now." We planned our next move like a sting operation. The block party had shown we could unite, so we organized a community forum before the HOA meeting, hosted at Carl's house. We invited every household, framing it as a chance to discuss neighborhood concerns. Diane couldn't ban it. It was private property. Over 40 people showed up, crowding Carl's backyard. I laid out the evidence: the unregistered golf cart, the shady finances, the fines that broke budgets. Priya shared her garden story, her voice cracking as she described hiding her plants to avoid more fines. The Garcias talked about delaying their daughter's party. The mood shifted from fear to defiance. 3 more neighbors signed the petition, pushing us to 41. We had the votes to force a recall. But Diane was relentless. She started calling residents, spreading lies about our illegal forum. She even reported me to the county for misusing my patrol officer status, claiming I was intimidating her. My sergeant laughed it off when the complaint reached him. "Sam, you're the most by-the-book guy I know. She's got nothing." Still, it stung. She was trying to hit my career, my livelihood. I kept my badge out of it, but I couldn't help feeling the irony. Diane played cop with her golf cart, while I, an actual officer, was fighting her with paperwork and patience. Mike drafted a second cease and desist, citing her harassment and defamation. We served it to her at her house, watching her face pale as she read it. The day before the HOA meeting, Diane made her boldest move yet. She parked her golf cart in our cul-de-sac, amber light flashing, and started handing out preemptive fines to anyone who'd attended our forum. She hit Carl with a $300 fine for unapproved signage, a welcome banner from the block party. She tried to fine Laura for obstructing pedestrian pathways because Ellie's bike was on our driveway. I stepped outside, phone recording. "Diane, you're on private property. Leave, or I'm calling the real police." Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected pushback. "You can't threaten me," she snapped. I smiled. "I'm not. I'm stating facts." "You're breaking the law." She sped off, but the encounter spread like wildfire. Neighbors texted me videos of her patrols, each one more desperate. We were ready for the meeting, armed with evidence and a united front. As I lay in bed that night, Laura's hand in mine, I felt the weight of what was coming. The meeting would be a showdown, and Diane wouldn't go down without a fight. But we had the law, the neighbors, and the truth on our side. Ellie was asleep down the hall, her bike parked safely in the garage. This fight was for her, for every kid who deserved to play without fear, every neighbor tired of Diane's fake badge. I wasn't just a highway patrol officer anymore. I was a dad, a husband, a neighbor, and I was ready to take her down. The HOA meeting loomed like a storm cloud over Crestwood Estates, and the tension in our house was palpable. Laura and I spent the evening before finalizing our strategy with Mike, our lawyer, who'd turned our living room into a war room. Laptop open, stacks of financial records, and a whiteboard scrawled with timelines and bylaws. Ellie sensed the mood, tiptoeing in to ask, "Is the mean lady going away, Daddy?" I knelt down, forcing a smile. "We're working on it, kiddo. Go ride your bike tomorrow, okay?" Her nod was hesitant, but it fueled me. Diane's HOA cop reign had made my daughter afraid in her own neighborhood, and that was unforgivable. We had 41 signatures for the recall petition, enough to force a vote. But Diane was a cornered animal, and I knew she'd fight dirty. My highway patrol training taught me to anticipate escalation, and I wasn't about to underestimate her. Diane's next move came at dawn. I woke to find a new HOA notice taped to our mailbox, accusing us of fomenting unrest and threatening a $1,000 fine for violating community harmony. It was laughable but chilling. She was trying to scare us into backing down before the meeting. I snapped a photo and sent it to Mike, who replied, "She's desperate. This is defamation. Keep it." Neighbors reported similar notices, some with fines as high as $2,000 for attending our forum. Carl texted me, furious, "She's hitting everyone who signed the petition." The email group exploded, with Priya and the Garcias rallying others to resist. We organized an emergency call and 30 households joined, their voices a mix of anger and resolve. "She can't fine us for free speech," Priya said. "Let's hit her with the petition tonight." I agreed, but my gut warned me Diane had an ace up her sleeve. Mike suggested we broaden our attack. The financial records were our strongest weapon, over $10,000 in questionable expenses tied to Diane, including that $2,000 event planning check. We cross-referenced dates and found more. Payments to a landscaping company owned by her cousin, invoices for HOA supplies shipped to her home address. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping, it was theft. Mike prepared a slide deck for the meeting, highlighting every shady transaction paired with the cease and desist letters and county warnings about her golf cart. But we needed to win hearts, not just heads. Laura suggested I open with a personal story, something to remind neighbors why we were fighting. "Talk about Ellie," she said. "Make them feel what's at stake." I spent hours drafting my speech, picturing my daughter's bike gathering dust because of Diane's bullying. Diane didn't let up. She called an emergency HOA board session the day before the meeting, claiming it was to review resident complaints. We weren't invited, but Carl's friend on the board, a quiet accountant named Ellen, leaked the details. Diane was pushing to rewrite the bylaws to make recalls harder, requiring a 75% vote instead of 51%. It was a blatant power grab, and Ellen said the board was split. 2 of Diane's cronies backed her, but she and another member were wavering. I saw an opening. I met Ellen for coffee, keeping it low-key. "You've seen the finances," I said, showing her the receipts. "You know what's going on." She nodded, her face pale. "I didn't sign up for this. I'll vote against her." With Ellen on our side, Diane's bylaw change was dead, but we still needed to sway the room. The petition gained traction. We hit 45 signatures by noon as more neighbors joined after Diane's latest fines. Mrs. Nguyen brought over a tray of homemade spring rolls, her way of saying thanks. "I signed," she said, She can't control us anymore. The community forum had lit a spark, and the block party's success showed we could stand together. But Diane was still campaigning, knocking on doors with promises of lower dues if residents supported her. She even spread a rumor that I was abusing my patrol officer status, claiming I'd threatened her with arrest. It was a lie, but it stung. My badge was my pride, earned through years of service. I called my sergeant to give him a heads up, and he laughed. "She's grasping, Sam. Stay clean, and she's got nothing." I vowed to keep my job out of it, fighting as a neighbor, not a cop. We prepped for the meeting like a military operation. Mike coached me on presenting the financial evidence. Calm, factual, no gloating. Laura made posters with photos of Ellie and other kids, captioned, "Let our kids play free." Priya and the Garcias volunteered to speak, sharing their stories of Diane's harassment. Carl offered to handle crowd control, ensuring Diane's allies couldn't derail us. We also planned a backup. If the recall vote failed, we'd file a formal complaint with the state's HOA oversight board, citing fraud and harassment. Mike warned it could take months, so the vote was our best shot. As we finalized details, Diane made a bold move. She reported our block party to the county as an unpermitted disturbance, despite our valid permit. The county dismissed it, but she sent an HOA email claiming we'd broken the law. It was a last-ditch effort to paint us as rebels. The afternoon of the meeting, tension hung over Crestwood like humidity before a storm. Diane's golf cart was everywhere, her amber light flashing as she handed out more fines. She stopped at our house, glaring as I mowed the lawn. "You're making a mistake, Sam," she called out. I kept mowing, ignoring her, but my hands shook on the handle. Laura noticed and pulled me inside. "She's trying to bait you," she said. "Stay focused." I nodded, but the stakes felt higher than ever. If we lost the vote, Diane could tighten her grip, making life hell for years. Ellie's laughter from the backyard, where she was finally riding her bike again, reminded me why we couldn't fail. I wasn't just fighting for our family. I was fighting for every neighbor who'd felt her wrath. By 6 p.m., the community center parking lot was packed. Neighbors streamed in, some clutching our posters, others whispering nervously. Diane's golf cart was parked out front, amber light still flashing, a final act of defiance. I carried a folder with our evidence, financials, petition, county warnings. Laura held my hand, her palms sweaty but steady. Carl and Priya flanked us, ready to back us up. The room buzzed with anticipation, like the moment before a verdict. Diane stood at the front, her smile forced, her eyes darting. She thought she could still win, but I'd spent years on the highway, reading people, staying calm under pressure. This was my turf now, not as a cop, but as a dad, a neighbor, a man done with bullies. Tonight, we'd show Diane what real authority looked like. The community center was a pressure cooker by 7 p.m., the air thick with tension and the faint smell of burnt coffee from a pot left on too long. Over 60 residents packed the folding chairs, their faces a mix of curiosity, anger, and unease. Diane stood at the podium, her neon tracksuit swapped for a crisp blazer, but her clipboard was still clutched like a shield. Her allies, 3 board members and a handful of loyalists, sat in the front row, nodding as she opened with a speech about maintaining Crestwood's values. I stood at the back with Laura, Carl, and Priya, my folder of evidence heavy in my hands. Ellie was at home with a sitter, but I could still hear her voice asking if the mean lady would go away. My highway patrol training kept me calm. Breathe, assess, act. But my heart pounded. This was it. The moment we'd either break Diane's grip or lose Crestwood to her forever. Diane's speech was a master class in manipulation. She painted herself as the victim, claiming a small group of agitators was undermining the HOA's mission. She didn't name us, but her eyes locked on mine as she spoke. "These rebels held an illegal block party, risking fines for all of you," she said, her voice dripping with concern. A few heads nodded and my stomach twisted. She was good, twisting facts, stoking fear. She mentioned rising dues if disorder continued, a veiled threat to scare the undecided. Then she dropped her bombshell, a motion to amend the bylaws, raising the recall threshold to 75%. "This protects our community," she said, smiling. I glanced at Ellen, the board member we'd swayed. She looked down, avoiding Diane's gaze. We had to act fast. I raised my hand, stepping forward. "I'd like to address the room," I said, my voice steady despite the eyes boring into me. Diane hesitated, then nodded, her smile tight. I started with Ellie, how she'd stopped riding her bike because Diane's HOA cop patrols made her feel watched, scared. "This isn't about rules," I said. "It's about our kids, our homes, our freedom." I held up the county permit from our block party, debunking her illegal claim. Murmurs spread. Neighbors were listening. Then I handed the floor to Mike, who projected the financial records on a screen. Gasps echoed as he pointed out Diane's $10,000 in questionable expenses, checks for consulting, landscaping to her cousin's company, that $2,000 barbecue. "This is your money," Mike said. "Where did it go?" Diane leapt up, her face flushed. "This is slander. Those are legitimate expenses." But her voice cracked, and the room wasn't buying it. Priya stood next, her voice shaking but clear, recounting the $200 fine for her garden. "I hid my plants to avoid her," she said. "This isn't a community. It's a dictatorship." The Garcias followed, sharing how Diane's fines forced them to cancel their daughter's birthday. Carl, gruff as ever, told the room about his $300 fine for a banner, his voice booming. "She's not a cop. She's a bully." The crowd was electric now, whispers turning to angry chatter. Diane's allies tried to interrupt, but Ellen, the board accountant, stood up. "I've seen the books," she said quietly. "There's no proof for half these expenses." The room erupted. Diane banged the podium, shouting for order. "This is a witch hunt," she cried, but her authority was crumbling. I held up our petition, 45 signatures strong. "We're calling for a recall vote. Tonight," I said, citing the bylaw allowing 51% of residents to force it. Diane's eyes widened. She hadn't expected us to hit the threshold. She tried to stall, claiming the petition was invalid without board review, but Mike was ready. "Florida law doesn't require board approval," he said, quoting the statute. The crowd cheered, drowning out her protests. Ellen moved to hold the vote immediately, and the other wavering board member seconded. Diane's cronies looked panicked. She was losing control. The vote was chaos. Diane tried to filibuster, reading bylaws aloud, but neighbors shouted her down. "Vote now," someone yelled from the back. Ballots were passed out, and Laura squeezed my hand, her nails digging in. I scanned the room, counting allies, Carl, Priya, the Garcias, Mrs. Nguyen, and at least 30 others we'd rallied. But Diane's loyalists were whispering, passing notes. I worried they'd sway enough votes to block the recall. As ballots were collected, Diane stood at the podium, her face a mask of defiance. "You'll regret this," she hissed, loud enough for me to hear. I thought of my patrol shifts, staying calm when drivers yelled, knowing the law was on my side. This was no different. Diane wasn't the law here. We were. The results came in. 48 for recall, 14 for 14 against. The room exploded in cheers, chairs scraping as neighbors hugged and high-fived. Diane sat frozen, her clipboard abandoned. Her cronies slipped out quietly, avoiding eye contact. We nominated Ellen, Priya, and Carl for the new board, and they were elected in a landslide. Diane tried one last jab, announcing she'd appeal the vote, but Mike shut her down. "The law's clear," he said. "You're out." As the meeting ended, neighbors swarmed us, thanking us for standing up. Mrs. Nguyen hugged Laura, tears in her eyes. "I can plant my roses again," she said. I felt a weight lift, but I knew Diane wouldn't vanish quietly. She'd made this personal, and I was ready for her next move. That night, Laura and I sat on our porch, the hum of cicadas filling the air. Ellie was asleep, her bike parked proudly in the driveway. The victory felt sweet, but incomplete. Diane was still a resident, still a threat. Mike warned us she might try a lawsuit, claiming the recall was unfair. We had the financial evidence, the county warnings, and the community on our side, but I couldn't shake the feeling she'd strike back. My patrol instincts kicked in, always anticipate the next move. As I sipped my beer, I thought of Ellie's smile when she rode her bike today, fearless for the first time in months. This fight wasn't over, but we'd won the biggest battle. Diane thought she was the HOA cop. Tonight, Crestwood showed her who really held the badge. Diane was gone from the HOA board, but the air in Crestwood Estates still felt charged, like the quiet after a lightning strike. The recall vote had been a triumph, 48-14, a landslide that stripped her of her HOA cop title and sent her slinking out of the community center. But I'd seen enough on the highway to know that people like Diane don't just fade away. Bullies lick their wounds and come back swinging, and I wasn't about to let my guard down. Laura and I sat up late that night, the glow of our porch light casting shadows across the lawn. Ellie was asleep, dreaming of bike rides free from Diane's glares, but Laura's brow was furrowed. "She's not done, Sam," she said, swirling her wine. "She'll try something." I nodded, my patrol officer instincts on high alert. We'd won the battle, but the war wasn't over. Diane had too much pride to let this go, and I needed to be ready for her next move. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with a new energy. Neighbors waved as I mowed the lawn, their smiles genuine for the first time in months. Mrs. Nguyen stopped by with a bouquet of her roses, a quiet thank you for giving her back her garden. Carl texted me a photo of his toolbox sitting defiantly in his driveway, captioned, "No fines today." The new board, Ellen, Priya, and Carl, got to work immediately, holding an emergency meeting to repeal Diane's harshest rules. They lifted fines for minor infractions like chalk drawings and unapproved mailboxes, and they clarified that private property, like our driveway, was off-limits for HOA enforcement. Ellie rode her bike in the cul-de-sac that afternoon, her laughter echoing, and for a moment it felt like we'd won it all. But I knew better than to relax. Diane's retaliation came faster than I expected. By midweek, she'd filed a formal complaint with the HOA's State Oversight Board, claiming the recall vote was rigged and that I'd abused my authority as a highway patrol officer to intimidate residents. It was a bold lie, but she'd twisted just enough truth to make it sting. She included a blurry photo of me holding the county permit at the block party, claiming I'd flashed my badge. My sergeant called me in, his tone more amused than concerned. "Sam, this lady's got it out for you," he said, tossing her complaint on his desk. "It's baseless, but watch your back." I assured him I'd kept my job out of the fight, but the accusation burned. Diane was trying to hit me where it hurt most: my career, my integrity. I called Mike, our lawyer, who laughed when I read him the complaint. "She's grasping at straws," he said. "The vote followed bylaws and you never mentioned your job. We'll counter with the financial evidence." He filed a response with the state, attaching the $10,000 in questionable expenses and affidavits from neighbors about Diane's harassment. But Diane wasn't stopping there. She started a smear campaign, posting flyers around Crestwood accusing our new board of corruption and claiming they'd raise dues to fund their agenda. She even knocked on doors, telling residents I'd bribed them with the block party. Most laughed her off. Our email group, now 50 strong, shared her flyers as a joke. But a few of her loyalists listened, sowing doubt. I felt the pressure mounting. We'd ousted her, but she was fighting to regain control. The new board moved fast to solidify our gains. Ellen, as the new treasurer, launched a full audit of HOA finances, hiring an independent accountant to dig into Diane's spending. They found more: $5,000 in consulting fees to a company that didn't exist, and a $3,000 security upgrade for cameras that were never installed. Priya drafted a newsletter, transparent and direct, sharing the findings and promising accountability. Carl pushed for a new rule requiring all HOA vehicles to be registered, a direct jab at Diane's golf cart. The board also sent a letter to residents, affirming that private property rights, like our driveway and Mrs. Nguyen's garden, were untouchable. Neighbors cheered, but Diane's flyers kept appearing, and I caught her golf cart circling our street at odd hours, her amber light flashing like a taunt. I decided to confront her, not as a cop, but as a neighbor. I waited one evening until her golf cart slowed near our house. I stepped out, phone recording, and called, "Diane, we need to talk." She stopped, her face a mask of defiance. "You've got nothing on me, Sam," she snapped. I kept my voice calm. "Your complaint's baseless, and you know it. Stop the flyers, or we'll escalate to a lawsuit." She laughed, but it was brittle. "You think you're a big shot because you're a cop? I'll outlast you." She sped off, but her words lingered. She was betting on wearing us down, banking on her ability to manipulate. I sent the video to Mike, who added it to our growing file. "She's giving us ammunition," he said. "Keep documenting." Laura and I leaned on the community to counter Diane's campaign. We organized a second neighborhood unity event, this time a barbecue at Priya's house to keep morale high. Over 60 people came, bringing food and stories of Diane's past tyranny. The Garcias shared how they'd finally thrown their daughter's birthday party, free from fines. Mrs. Nguyen showed photos of her blooming roses. The event wasn't just a celebration. It was a show of strength. Diane drove by, her golf cart idling at the corner, but she didn't dare stop. The county had issued her a second warning about her unregistered vehicle, and we heard she'd been fined $500. Her HOA cop days were numbered, but I knew she'd try one last stunt. My patrol instinct screamed, anticipate, prepare, execute. As the audit neared completion, Ellen called me with big news. The accountant had traced Diane's consulting payments to a bank account linked to her sister-in-law. It was fraud, plain and simple, and enough for criminal charges if we pushed. Mike advised caution. Civil action was safer, less messy. We filed a lawsuit against Diane for misuse of HOA funds, seeking restitution and an injunction to stop her harassment. The filing hit Crestwood like a bombshell. Neighbors who'd stayed neutral now openly supported us, and Diane's flyers stopped appearing. But I couldn't shake the feeling she was planning something bigger. Late one night, I saw her golf cart parked near the community center, her silhouette inside, hunched over papers. Whatever she was plotting, we'd be ready. Ellie's bike was back in the cul-de-sac, her laughter our North Star. Diane could scheme all she wanted. This neighborhood was ours now. Diane's shadow lingered over Crestwood Estates like a stubborn fog, even after her ousting from the HOA board. The lawsuit we'd filed, alleging misuse of HOA funds and harassment, was a ticking bomb, and I could sense she was scrambling to defuse it. As a highway patrol officer, I'd dealt with desperate people before. Drivers caught with fake plates, speeders spinning wild excuses. Diane was no different, except her weapon wasn't a car. It was manipulation, and she wielded it like a pro. Laura and I tried to keep things normal for Ellie, who was back to riding her bike with a grin that made my heart ache less. But every time I saw Diane's golf cart creep by, its amber light now dimmed to avoid county fines, I knew she was plotting. The neighborhood was ours again, but she wasn't done fighting for control. This was the final stretch, and I wasn't about to let her slither back into power. The audit results hit like a thunderclap. Ellen, our new board treasurer, presented them at a community meeting a week after the recall. The room, packed with 50 residents, fell silent as she projected the numbers. $18,000 in unaccounted HOA funds over 3 years, with $12,000 directly tied to Diane's consulting payments and personal expenses. The accountant had traced $5,000 to her sister-in-law's account and another $3,000 to a landscaping company that never worked in Crestwood. Gasps turned to angry murmurs. Mrs. Nguyen stood, her voice trembling. I paid dues while saving for my son's college. She stole from us! Carl slammed his fist on a chair. Jail her! Ellen called for calm, but the room was a powder keg. Diane wasn't there. She'd declined to attend, but her absence only fueled the fire. We voted unanimously to turn the audit over to the county prosecutor for potential fraud charges. Diane's response was swift and vicious. She filed a countersuit, claiming the new board was defaming her and that the recall was a conspiracy led by me, a corrupt cop abusing authority. She doubled down on her lie that I'd used my highway patrol badge to intimidate her, attaching an affidavit from one of her cronies who swore I'd threatened arrest at the block party. It was nonsense, but it hit hard. My sergeant pulled me aside again, his tone serious this time. Sam, this is getting messy. She's got no case, but she's dragging your name through the mud. I felt the sting. My career was my pride, built on years of integrity. I assured him I'd kept my badge out of it, but doubt crept in. What if Diane's lies stuck? What if Ellie heard her dad called a crook? Mike, our lawyer, was unfazed. She's got no evidence, he said, reviewing her countersuit. Her crony's affidavit is hearsay, and we've got 50 witnesses to the contrary. He filed a motion to dismiss, attaching our dossier, security footage of Diane trespassing, the county's golf cart warnings, and the audit's damning receipts. But Diane wasn't just fighting in court. She launched a new smear campaign, emailing residents a manifesto accusing the new Board of Planning to bankrupt the HOA with legal fees. She claimed I was weaponizing my job to silence her, twisting my silence as a cop into a threat. A few neighbors, still loyal to her, started whispering. One stopped Laura at the mailbox, saying, "Is Sam really a cop? Diane says he's dangerous." Laura came home fuming, her usual calm shattered. "She's poisoning people, Sam. We have to end this." We rallied the neighborhood again. Priya organized a truth meeting at her house, where we shared the audit findings and Diane's countersuit. Over 40 residents showed up, crowding her living room. Carl passed out copies of the $5,000 check to Diane's sister-in-law, and Priya read Diane's manifesto aloud, debunking each lie with facts. The Garcias brought their daughter, who shyly thanked everyone for letting her have her birthday party. The room softened. Neighbors weren't just angry. They were protective. We gained 2 more petition signatures, pushing us to 47, a safety net in case Diane challenged the recall's validity. Ellen announced the board was freezing dues until the lawsuit was settled, countering Diane's scare tactics. The crowd cheered, but I saw worry in Laura's eyes. "She's not giving up," she whispered. I nodded, my patrol instinct screaming, "She's planning something big!" Sure enough, Diane's next move was audacious. She parked her golf cart outside the community center late one night, caught on our new board's security cameras, and was seen tampering with the HOA's mailbox, where notices and payments were dropped. The footage was grainy, but it showed her slipping something inside, likely fake documents to bolster her countersuit. I called Mike immediately, who filed an emergency motion for a restraining order citing tampering and harassment. The county sheriff, a colleague I'd worked with on joint patrols, reviewed the footage and issued a warning to Diane for suspicious activity. Her golf cart vanished from the streets after that, but I knew she was still scheming. Neighbors reported seeing her meeting with a lawyer at her house, a flashy guy in a suit who drove a BMW. She was gearing up for a fight, and we had to stay one step ahead. We tightened our strategy. Mike prepared for the lawsuit hearing, set for 2 weeks out, gathering affidavits from 20 neighbors about Diane's fines and threats. The board sent a letter to residents outlining the fraud evidence and promising transparency. Laura and I went door to door, not to campaign, but to listen. People opened up, stories of Diane's bullying going back years, from fining a veteran for a flagpole to threatening a single mom with eviction over late dues. The emotional toll hit me hard. This wasn't just about our family anymore. It was about a community crushed under Diane's fake badge. Ellie, sensing the stress, drew me a picture of her bike by the cul-de-sac. Captioned, "Safe now." I taped it to my folder, a reminder of what we were fighting for. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch, staring at the dark street where Diane's golf cart used to prowl. Laura joined me, her hand warm on mine. "We've got this, Sam," she said. "She's got no power left." I wanted to believe her, but Diane's lies about my job gnawed at me. I'd spent years upholding the law, protecting people. Now, I was protecting my home, my daughter, my neighbors. Diane thought she could outlast us, but she didn't know the resolve of a dad or a cop who'd seen worse than her. The hearing would be our final stand, and I was ready to show her what real authority meant. The morning of the lawsuit hearing dawned humid and heavy, the kind of Florida day where the air clings to your skin. Laura and I drove to the county courthouse, our folder of evidence, audit reports, neighbor affidavits, security footage, sitting like a loaded weapon in my lap. Ellie was at school, oblivious to the stakes, but her drawing of her bike was tucked inside the folder, a talisman of why we'd fought this far. Diane's countersuit accusing me of abusing my highway patrol authority and the new HOA board of defamation was a desperate swing, but it wasn't toothless. She'd hired a slick lawyer, the BMW guy we'd seen at her house, and I knew they'd try to spin her as the victim. My patrol training kept my nerves steady, focus on facts, stay calm under fire. But the weight of her lies about my career pressed hard. This wasn't just about winning. It was about clearing my name and securing Crestwood's freedom from her HOA cop tyranny. The courtroom was small, with peeling paint and a judge who looked like he'd seen every neighborhood squabble imaginable. Diane sat across from us, her blazer crisp but her eyes darting nervously. Her lawyer, a guy named Vincent with a practiced smirk, opened with a theatrical tale of Diane as a dedicated community leader, targeted by a vindictive cop. He waved that blurry block party photo, claiming I'd brandished my badge to intimidate her. My stomach churned, but Mike, our lawyer, squeezed my shoulder. "Let him dig," he whispered. When our turn came, Mike was surgical. He presented the audit. $18,000 in misspent HOA funds, including $5,000 to Diane's sister-in-law and $3,000 for non-existent landscaping. He showed security footage of Diane tampering with the HOA mailbox, her golf cart's illegal patrols, and the county's warnings. 20 neighbor affidavits detailed her harassment. Fines for roses, bikes, birthday parties. The judge's brow furrowed as Mike spoke, his pen scratching notes. I took the stand, my voice steady as I recounted Diane's bullying. I told the judge about Ellie, how she'd stopped riding her bike because Diane's golf cart made her feel watched, hunted. "I'm a highway patrol officer," I said, looking straight at Diane. "I uphold the law, not abuse it. I never used my badge in this fight, just facts and community." Laura followed, her voice soft but fierce, describing Diane's grocery store threat and the toll on our family. Priya and Carl testified too, their stories of fines and fear painting a picture of a neighborhood suffocated. Diane's lawyer tried to trip us up, grilling me about threatening Diane with arrest. I held up my phone footage from our confrontation. I said I'd call the police, not arrest her. "I'm a neighbor here, not a cop." The judge nodded, unimpressed by Vincent's theatrics. Diane's testimony was a disaster. She rambled about her dedication to Crestwood, But when Mike cross-examined her about the $5,000 check to her sister-in-law, she stammered, claiming it was for consulting services. Mike held up the audit, showing the company didn't exist. The judge's eyes narrowed. Vincent tried to pivot, arguing the recall vote was coerced, but Mike countered with the petition's 47 signatures and bylaws proving its legality. The room felt alive, neighbors in the gallery nodding, some whispering angrily as Diane's lies unraveled. The judge called a recess, and Laura gripped my hand. "We've got her," she whispered. But I'd seen enough courtrooms to know nothing was certain until the gavel fell. The ruling came fast. The judge dismissed Diane's countersuit as without merit, citing lack of evidence for her claims against me and the board. He upheld our lawsuit, ordering Diane to repay $15,000 of the misspent funds and issuing a permanent injunction barring her from HOA leadership or enforcement actions. He also referred the audit to the county prosecutor for potential fraud charges, a blow that made Diane slump in her seat. Vincent's smirk was gone. Diane's face was ashen. The gallery erupted in cheers, neighbors hugging and clapping. Mrs. Nguyen grabbed my arm, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Sam," she said. I felt a weight lift, but my eyes stayed on Diane. She slipped out, avoiding the crowd, her golf cart nowhere in sight. Back in Crestwood, the victory spread like wildfire. The new board sent a newsletter detailing the ruling, promising to use the repaid funds to fix community sidewalks and plant a garden. Mrs. Nguyen's idea. Diane's house went up for sale a week later, her golf cart parked in her garage, its amber light dismantled. Neighbors threw a celebration barbecue, kids racing bikes in the cul-de-sac, free from fear. Ellie led the pack, her ponytail flying, and Laura leaned against me, her smile soft. "We did it, Sam," she said. But the fight had left scars. I'd spent sleepless nights worrying about my job, my family, our home. Diane's lies about my badge had cut deep. Even if they didn't stick, I'd protected Crestwood, but at a cost. Months later, life felt normal again. Ellie's bike was a constant in the cul-de-sac, her laughter a reminder of what we'd won. The board, led by Ellen, Priya, and Carl, was transparent, fair, focused on community, not control. Neighbors waved, shared beers, planted gardens without fear of fines. Diane's house sold to a young family who joined our block parties, oblivious to the war we'd fought. But I'd never forget. On patrol, pulling over speeders or handling crashes, I'd think of Diane's golf cart, her fake badge of authority. She'd thought she was the law, but Crestwood showed her otherwise. We didn't need a cop to win, just truth, neighbors, and a dad who wouldn't let his daughter's joy be stolen. This fight taught me something. Bullies like Diane thrive on fear, but they crumble when you stand together. Crestwood wasn't just a neighborhood now. It was a family. Have you ever faced an HOA tyrant or a fake cop like Diane? Did you fight back and win? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear how you triumphed.